I mean, we say all the time that, you can't buy community, but you can build it. I think where we try to be different, we say that we are a connection-based community, not a rule-based community. My highest hope for this project is that it really does become an inspirational model for how can people actually coordinate and collaborate toward, the better world that we want to see.
Today I have a conversation with Zach, and Zach is responsible for the invisible infrastructure of our community in Ecovilla. My name is Inka, I'm a neighbor in Ecovilla. And Zach, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I am indeed Zach. I've been living here on the project for the last 2 years. My wife and 10-year-old son and I were the first residents here. And as Inika said, I help to lead the invisible infrastructure. And what that means is thinking about the culture and governance structures that will support the community. So we have our invisible, our visible infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the roads, power, water, etc. And the invisible infrastructure, sort of something we see it's equally important to support and hold the community. So that's what I help to develop.
Great. So how is this different from living in a gated community, for example?
I mean, it's a good question. I hope that it's different in living in a gated community. Here there's two primary differences. One is that being connected to the surrounding region, the surrounding area, is a priority for ourselves and for most, or if not all, of the neighbors here. And so the idea of a gated community sort of being closed off, as opposed to a lot of the work we're doing connecting with local entrepreneurs, connecting with local organizations, really trying to build and forge those connections together, we see as really important for a whole variety of reasons. But really, we're a part of a bioregion here where there's lots of communities, obviously lots of people who have been here for many generations before. And so, creating an exchange where we can learn from each other, especially where we can learn from them about the land, how to take care of it, how to be here, that part is really important. The other way it's different is that people are coming here kind of expressly because of this value of community. In other gated communities, people sort of buy a lot, and there are homeowners association rules to make sure that no one is impinging on your rights or doing things that aren't agreed to. And it's sort of implicitly adversarial, right? To make sure that my lot is protected from my neighbors because I don't know who they are, what their motivations are. Whereas here, people are actively making the choice to say, I want to lean into this concept of community. I recognize the importance of human connection, of personal growth. I mean, for me, being able to just watch my son, ride off in the morning, I'm going to Logan's house and I know I can trust wherever he's going to go or wherever he's going to be, whoever he's going to be with. So yeah, I think what we have here is people really opting into a way of living together that you won't necessarily find in a sort of standard gated community.
And one of the things I hear you say regularly is that in this type of community, you actually need your neighbors. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's our ambition, to actually need your neighbors. Again, a lot of the people that are coming here, making, big lifestyle changes, big commitments to come, be an immigrant to a different country, a different culture. Obviously, there's a big financial commitment, but the reason that they're doing it is because there's some vision that they're pursuing of a community that's more connected. And so when we say a community is people who actually need each other, that's sort of recognizing that for a lot of us, the places we come from, society itself has become very transactional. And I actually, I can get my food from the store and I can get my needs met from all sorts of different places in a more transactional way. I don't need my neighbors. Whereas here, what we're trying to do is create a community, not necessarily where, I need my neighbors to get by or survive, but, the vision that we're building toward here is really like, what does a more sane way of living on the planet look like, both sociologically and ecologically? And to do that, we do need each other. We need everyone to be participating, to be leaning into growth edges, and to be able to make decisions together at a wide scale, to be able to collaborate toward growing a lot of food, and how are we going to actually harvest and distribute that. There's a lot that goes into living together, that we sort of have made that trade-off in many places in modern society, and a lot of people that are coming here want to try to reorganize that equation.
And can you speak about the opportunities that we have in this community, but also the challenges we're facing, because we are an international community. We have, I believe now, 60 plus nationalities. We have different cultural backgrounds. So how does that work, especially in the field of the invisible infrastructure?
Given that right now, we've been a community of 3 people for the last 2 years, and now we've blossomed to almost 12, but there's 30 houses under construction. So the only honest answer is like, we'll see. But what we're envisioning is that there are some unifying commitments. A big part of our invisible infrastructure on the sort of cultural side is commitments, regarding like, I really take responsibility for my own experience. I stay curious, I address conflict or tension, like clearly, directly, and respectfully. And so creating some of these touch points, agreements that we all make ahead of time can help set the stage for navigating a lot of these issues. In some ways, when you ask like, what's the opportunity and the challenge, the answer is the same. It's the people. We have some really interesting and dynamic people coming here, a lot of young families who are really committed to raising their families and living in a different sort of mindset. And so there's a tremendous amount of energy that people have ready to bring to bear on different projects and different initiatives. At the same time, like you said, a whole bunch of diversity in kind of all the different ways. And culture is one of those chief among them. And that's why a lot of our invisible infrastructure is really focused on creating a culture here. One of the big opportunities we have is that this isn't a legacy project that has sort of norms established and the way we do things here. That's still kind of open. And so we can very intentionally and consciously design for and mold together intentionally what are the norms. How do we do things around here? And so when we start off with that kind of trajectory and container, really good things can happen, as opposed to just kind of letting it come together however it does.
I can imagine that a challenge can also be that we come from a very rules-based society, and we come here to create a new lifestyle, but the risk is that we want to bring elements of our old lifestyle here, and then
100%.
Yeah, and people might be looking for structure and rules, and how do you see that?
The first thing I'll say is that structure and rules are very, very important. It's really important that everybody understands the ground rules and rules of the game. And we do have bylaws to help navigate those things as far as, what are your payments to support all the infrastructure here? What are the rules for how and where you can build? All these things are really important that they're explicit. I think where we try to be different, we say that we are connection-based community, not a rule-based community. And the reason that's so important is it's true. A lot of us, I'll speak for myself, coming from the United States, where it is a very individualistic, a very litigious, and a very rule-based place. And coming here again, people are taking a really big leap in a lot of different ways to move here. And that stirs up a lot of both conscious and unconscious, different anxiousness, fears, and anxiety. And our natural response to that, when things are ambiguous and hard and confusing, is to try to control it and make order. So we can kind of default to these kind of ways of being without even really realizing it, which is why it's so important that we consciously move toward connection-based. And to give us a specific example of what do I mean? What is the difference between a rule-based and connection-based? So, for example, if I'm at the pool and I'm really enjoying just the sound of the birds and the quiet, and some other people come and they're feeling like in a party mood and they turn on their tunes and they're bumping it at the pool, this situation happened, and it was one neighbor's suggestion that we need to institute quiet hours at the pool. We need a rule so that we know when, that the pools are for, peaceful and quiet. And in a rule-based system, every time there was some sort of conflict or issue, we would have a rule to deal with that. What a connection-based community is, we try to build the skills and the mentality, the mindset, to be able to directly engage with people, to really clearly state what are your wants and boundaries. So in this case, can somebody skillfully communicate, I was really enjoying listening to the birds, maybe we could forego the music for now, maybe you could use headphones if you're really into it, maybe you could wait, I'll be gone in an hour, etc. There's ways to engage with it. And the reason this is so critical is because a rule-based system doesn't actually negate the need for this connection-based system. Even if there was a rule, I still have to engage the person about what's happening. It's just now, instead of owning my wants and my boundaries, I'm saying, oh, well, there's a rule. And it's sort of leaning on this to do that work for me. And if we do that too much, these skills of actually claiming what our wants and boundaries and negotiating sticky situations, they'll atrophy. And then, over time, we could end up being a really nice, beautiful, gated community instead of, what we envision, which is really, my highest hope for this project is that it really does become an inspirational model for how can people actually coordinate and collaborate toward, the better world that we want to see. I've been working in the sustainability and impact space for the last 20 years. And in my view, almost all the problems we face in this meta crisis, as lots of people call it, is coordination issues. And so, if we can at least amongst us show that there are ways that very, very diverse people can come together and coordinate and collaborate and figure out positive sum ways to live, that's a vision worth aspiring toward.
Yeah, absolutely. And how are we going to learn that as a community?
There's the only answer is through practice.
Yes.
And what are we practicing? So, there's a whole host of different modalities. We have sort of a base, I guess you could call it, toolkit or resource around these commitments. We have our design principles that really invite people to be able to take and hold both and perspectives. We have skilled facilitators that have experience sort of helping people to navigate this conflict. But really, what we want to do is create a culture that encourages that supports people in like the navigation of these edges. And I've already seen some of this working, where someone has a frustration or a conflict and they want to talk about it, or they want to gossip, and say, oh, I can't believe what this person said and that they did. And the response was, yeah, have you talked to them? Really like creating a norm where we encourage, support, and engage like in these hard conversations, because we know that each time we do, the whole community gets a little bit better at building toward this more inspirational vision, as opposed to defaulting toward a nice gated community.
Right. So for people who are watching this conversation and who might consider joining our community, what would you invite people to reflect on?
We say all the time that, you can't buy community, but you can build it. And I think, if anything that you've seen previously about what we're trying to do here, or anything that we're sharing right now is exciting or enlivening for you, I think like tune into that and pursue it. But also recognize that, no matter how great the physical and invisible infrastructure is, community is built by people showing up, by doing work together, by having these hard conversations together, learning how to do that skillfully, by taking responsibility for themselves, by staying curious, and that, what we're doing here at Ecovilla is really creating a canvas, but it's up to people to show up and do the painting. And that, I guess like anything in life, like you get out what you put in. And so, yes, we have game nights and potlucks and all the kids running around and playing together and all these like really, amazing things, especially to have right outside your door with lots of other values-aligned people. But to keep that actually robust and to move beyond sort of pseudo community where we're all happy and nice, but actually able to be ourselves and bump up against each other's edges and learn how to navigate that, it takes work, and so the payoff of this incredible community is going to be a lot of work that you put in. Sometimes, just like where you're living now, there's people that you may not prefer to deal with that you need to find a way to deal with. And the hope is that here we can do that with more skill and more care, and ultimately create a different and better experience for everybody.
Anything I haven't asked that you would like to touch base on?
We get a lot of questions about sort of our governance model, and just how decisions are made. And we do that through a blend of we use technology to do things like online voting and getting a sense of where people are. We've developed quite a few tools to be able to gather a lot of views from the community and share those in a summarized way, so that we don't need to spend a lot of time in meetings. For most of human history, community could fit around the fire, and you would talk about things because people had time to do that. And now, we're trying to sort of create these more modern campfires where people can asynchronously talk with, AI that's trained on all of our culture and all of our context, and really get their opinions put in a way that summarizes and helps make sense with the community. And so using some of these modern tools, we're able to collaborate, more effectively at scale. And really lead from that sort of place of what is it that we want to build, not what is it that we want to control. And that's a stretch for all of us, sort of leaving behind this kind of modern construct of like, what about me? What about my stuff? That's important. And, how are we in the community?
Yeah, I love that you say, what do we want to build instead of what do we want to control? I think that's a great summary of what we're trying to do here.
Yep. And if it resonates with you, come check it out and build it with us.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, Inigo.
Thank you.